Hi Android students, welcome back. This week and next week we'll be doing the Doodles app. So just wanted to give you a brief overview of the application, where things are, what's due, that kind of thing for this week. We won't go over all of the code in detail in this video, but if you have questions at any point in the next 2 weeks, please reach out. I'm happy to talk with you during office hours, or if that doesn't work out, we can set up a different time. So, please reach out if you have any questions. In the week 3 and 4 materials folder, you'll find 2 sets of slides. I'm going to be focusing on week 3 slides right now to get you started, and the expectation is that from there you'll pick up and keep reading the chapter. But again, if you have any questions, just reach out. I did zip up the completed application and it is available here. I highly recommend, like last week, downloading it, unzipping it, and using this as a model for the chapter example, but also as a starting point for the assignment, because there's just so many moving parts in some of these larger projects in the second Android class. And just like in the last 2 weeks where you modified the flag quiz app to make it a programming quiz app, in this one you won't do a modification in that way so much, but what you'll be doing is adding functionality. But once again, you'll be modifying an existing application. So for that, I recommend you use this application as your starting point and add to it. It will make life a lot easier, but I still encourage you to read over the steps to develop the application that are integral to this unit. So in week 3 and 4 in the assignments folder, you'll see that what we're going to see momentarily is this application actually is a little paint program. It's kind of fun. You get to see how you can design an application that allows the user to drag their finger and actually draw. And so the assignment will be to add to that functionality. The current Doodles app allows the user to change the color of the pencil, but you're tasked with changing the background color, so letting the user change the background color. And yeah, actually that's it. These other 3 points are all related. So if the user changes the background color to blue and then they choose to erase their drawing, the background should return to the default white. So just explaining some of the behavior, the expected behavior. In order to modify the project, read over the hints file. It really tells you which files you need to modify. So definitely look at that to help you. But first, let's get into this and take a look. Just a reminder, what is an app bar, or it's also called an action bar? This is the bar at the top of a lot of applications that provides space for the title of the application, any important actions, and sometimes navigation for the application. And over here on the right hand side, these 3 dots is called an option menu. If you're an Android user, you're probably pretty used to seeing this. It provides a menu for whatever for this application, whatever the menu options are. Sometimes menu options are under the options menu, and sometimes they appear to the left. So you have control as the programmer as to where you want to place them, but as we'll see on phones, we have a smaller space here for these menu options, whereas tablets, we have a larger. So when it doesn't have enough room, it's going to push them into this options menu. So the options menu is a collection of menu items for an activity. So we're well above these levels that they're speaking of. It says on Android 3.0 and higher, items from options menus are presented by the app bar. and overflow options, and the menu button, physical button on the device, is deprecated. So yeah, so you're going to see that options menu on most devices at this time. So as I said before, you know, if you're working on a phone with a smaller screen size, maybe not all your app's menu items will be displayed directly on the action bar. To give you an example, what I mean by that is these icons represent menu options that are displayed directly on the action bar. And then there may be others that are displayed in the option menu. So it's saying, you know, depending on that, they might not all fit, and then they will fall under the options menu. So on the application you're going to see momentarily, that is the case on the phone versus the tablet. So this app is called the Doodles app. Enables the user to paint by dragging one or more fingers across the screen. It provides options for letting the user change the color and the line width. It allows the user to clear the screen, save, and print, which is pretty interesting that it lets you do that. And it doesn't say it here, but actually, if you have this installed on a device, if you have an Android phone around that you can do this with, it's great to try it out. If you have an actual physical phone and you shake it, it should also erase the image, like an Etch-a-Sketch, if you've ever used one of those. So that's pretty neat. This app uses a permission mechanism that was introduced with Android 6.0. Basically, there's certain permissions that applications need, and in older versions of Android, it used to ask the user for permission when the app was installed. So if it had 10 different permissions, it asked for all 10, even if the user never even used functionality that utilized any of them. Now, applications can ask for them at the time that they're actually trying to use that item, that particular permission. So the Doodles app uses that for, I believe it's for accessing files, saving files, using the save functionality on the application. So in this application, you're also going to see seek bars. Seek bars are like sliders that allow you to, in this case, select the color or the line width for drawing. And as I said before, shaking the device will clear the screen. So I'm going to flip over here and take a look at the Doodles app. So here it is. By default, the line is pretty thin, and it has black font. But you can change the color, so I can make it all red. You can see these are what do you call seek bars rather, sorry. You can change your color, and you can also change the transparency, which is called alpha. So to the left makes it more see-through. If you want a bold color, you'll keep that all the way to the right. We can also, so that changed to the orangish color. We can also click on this paintbrush and choose wide line width. So again, we have this seek bar that you can drag, and it's kind of neat. Just like the color, we have a preview here, and the preview is allowing us to see that when we slide it to the right, we're choosing a wider width line. So there we have our wider line. So let's see what's under the menu here. We have the option to erase, save, and print. Now, if you've already saved prior using this application, which I have, I don't get any prompts there, it just saves it. You can also go to print. This will kick off selecting a printer on the device. Now, if you're using a virtual device like me, it will take you into that workflow, but I don't really have a printer set up to this. And finally, you can go to erase drawing, which pops up this dialog where you can either cancel or erase. So it's a neat little application. And really that's what these next few slides introduce, so I'm going to skip over those. So there's some new technologies for sure in this section, in this chapter rather. It talks about the fact that there's 6 activity life cycles: on create, on start, on resume, on pause, on stop, and on destroy. And when the system calls these methods in an activity, it also calls them in the corresponding fragments that are attached. So remember that a fragment is you can kind of think of it as a piece or module of an activity. So instead of having a separate activity, we break that functionality into what's called a fragment, and we can attach various fragments to an activity. So this app uses on resume and on pause methods, and basically we don't want, when a dialog box is open, like for example the user is setting line width, they're currently setting line width. We saw that when I was here and I was setting line width. I'm doing this right now. If this were a physical phone and I would accidentally kind of move it around when I was selecting line width, I wouldn't expect my image to erase. So we want to suppress that listening for a shake by what's called an accelerometer. We don't want that to be happening when there's a dialog box open. So that toggle of listening, not listening, we're going to turn on and off with these on resume and on pause methods. So that's the concept behind those and why there's some code in the on resume and on pause methods. We also in this chapter create what's called a custom view. A custom view, DoodleView, is actually the class. It is going to extend view, which basically makes it a subclass, which means it inherits all of the functionality of the view class. A view is really just generally a rectangular area that has some sort of display. It's very general, and we're using it as the displayable region of our screen. So DoodleView is really right here, minus the menu up at the top, the app bar up at the top. So as I said, the accelerometer, that's something on many devices that allows the app to detect movement. This is important for other applications that might be, counting your steps and things like that. For us, we're going to use it for when the user shakes the phone to say, did you want to erase? So they, in addition to coming up here and selecting erase drawing, could just shake the phone to prompt that same response. And the sensor manager class listens for those events. By the way, there are other things, a lot of sensor types on devices, gravity, proximity, temperature. So accelerometer is not the only one available. When you look at the project structure, you're actually going to find several Java classes. So let me pop over there. Yeah, so there's DoodleView. That represents the functionality behind the drawable region. Main activity, that's the starter activity that kicks off everything else. And main activity fragment inside of it. Main activity fragment basically is going to handle listening for, the on resume and enable accelerometer listening, that kind of thing. So it's handling some higher level activity. And then main activity fragment launches DoodleView that actually is the functionality for the drawable region. So what are these? Color, dialog, erase image, line width. Their name suggests what their functionality is. Color dialog fragment displays an alert dialog when the user is selecting the color. That's that pop-up we saw where I was selecting a color. Same for line width, although this one of course is for selecting line width. And the erase image dialog fragment displays a standard alert dialog for asking the user to confirm whether or not they want to delete the picture. So that's what these three classes are. So we have some in each of the three subclasses that we just talked about. We override some of the fragment lifecycle methods, which means that we'll actually add an on attach and an on detach to each one of those classes if you work through all the steps in the chapter. So as I said, when the user has a dialog box open, they're selecting the line width, we're going to make sure that we're also not on top of it popping up a dialog to say, did you want to erase? Because the user happened to move their phone to the left a bit and it's trying to detect a shake. So there's some functionality in there to make sure that things make sense in the application and we're not seeing two dialogues at the same time. A couple other classes we're using, the canvas class. It's used to basically draw on a bitmap. So the bitmap is another class that's going to make basically the DoodleViews viewable region. And the paint class, which is basically used by Canvas to adjust the color, line thickness, font size, and more. So we'll use that when we adjust the line thickness, for example. So these classes work together in DoodleView in order to make the functionality of the drawable area. Couple other classes. Another one is the path class, and it is used to basically keep track of, when the user drags their finger across the screen, that's called a path. So it needs to keep track of all the various paths that they've made so that we know that they drew a smiley face, then a flower, and we keep track of all those paths. And when the user creates a path, starts creating a path, we're going to be, processing that. So these are touch events. So we're going to have a on touch event where we're going to figure out, what kind of touching, did they lift the finger, put the finger down, and that kind of thing. So that is another new method that we haven't seen yet. And as you saw in this application, the user can save, right? So save, of course, what we're doing is we're accessing the Photos app on the actual device. So Android makes this nice and easy, which is really one of the nice things about Android is it's able to access media in the media store .images package. So some of these classes, Content Resolver, is basically going to allow us to insert an image. So we're calling a method called insert image of type media store.images.media. So these are new classes we haven't seen before, but basically they're going to enable us to save whatever the user has created. And just like saving, there's some supporting classes. The print helper class is there to allow us to be able to print. So some new classes. Another new thing that was mentioned is using this new permissions model that they mentioned. It's not really new anymore. It was new at the time, Android 6.0. But basically, when the user tries to save, if they haven't previously okayed permission for the application to access files on the device, it will pop up a message that asks the user if it's okay. So that's functionality that we have to tell the application that we're going to be using. So in the Android manifest, we're going to be specifying that we're using write external permission. So basically we're allowed to write to external storage and save the image. So once that's granted, the app has permission. Moving forward, it won't re-ask unless, of course, the app is reinstalled or the user changes the app permissions through the settings on the Android device. So at this point, the chapter starts going over all the steps to build the graphical user interface part. So, focusing on those layout files and so forth. So we'll go through a bit of that. As I said, I would just use the existing application for your assignment. It's probably more straightforward and just unzip it. But if you'd like to practice this, you can create a new project as directed and add the library that they indicate here. They do have some modification to strings.xml as usual, so no surprises there. One thing that they do that's different is they have this, they basically use these little icons. We saw those up here, the little paintbrush and so forth. The nice thing to know is that there's a whole bunch of these that were already created that you don't have to create. And they utilize those in this chapter. So if you're in Android Studio and you go to new vector asset, oops, sorry about that. There we go, vector asset. You can go into that workflow and select these different icons. So there's other icons out there as well, but it guides you if you're working through the chapter example to add these to your project, and it will add them under the drawable folder. And why do we do that? Because a little bit later when you're creating the menu, you associate those various icons with the menu option. This particular application creates a menu from scratch. It doesn't use the default menu, so it has you go out and create a new menu from the top level and call it Doodle Fragment menu. And we can take a look at that. It's going to appear under the menu folder. And there's the code for it. The top level node here is menu, menu, and then you'll see that we have 5 items corresponding to the 5 menu options, right? So we have color, line width, erase, save, and print. Now you notice on my phone emulated device, I have the first 2 as icons and the last 3 appearing in the options menu. So we see that here, right? So, oops, sorry about that. Let's go back here. Here we go. So where are those icons coming from? Here you can see the icon attribute is being set for each one of them, and it is pointing to those drawable icons that we just added. Whether or not they display or not depends on how big the device display is. So when it says shows as action if room, as all of these say if room, that means if Android's operating system decides there's enough room, it's going to display them. So if you were to view this on a tablet, you may see all 5 of the icons instead of just 2 of them. So that's important to understand, and it's pretty nifty that that's all you have to do in order to display or not display, or specify only display if there's room. Okay, we already talked about this in Android Manifest. We'd need to specify that this application writes to external storage. I feel like sometimes the hardest part about some of these projects is just file management, because there's so many different files, especially if you compare it to the Android One projects that were very simple, where we typically had just one or two activities. Now, when we look, we see multiple Java class files that we talked about, and under layout, you see multiple layouts as well. So sometimes that's a bit difficult to understand where all these files are coming from and what they're all being used for. So this made sense in my mind. I don't know if it helps at all, but I drew a little picture here where activity underscore main is the green box representing the outermost layer and the first layout. On it is an app bar. So just like we see, when we look at the application, there's an app bar at the top. And then this light blue content main is a container that's used to basically hold other things. And when I say other things, everything that we really want to see other than the menu bar. So that's where those three that's where this file and this file are coming from. Activity underscore main is the container that holds the app bar and the main content. Content in turn holds fragment main, which holds DoodleView. So how do I know that? Well, you can look through here. If you look at activity underscore main, it has an app bar. And if you look at it, it includes a layout content main. So it basically, content main resides right where that says include. So content main, if you look at it, only content is fragment main, which is this one over here. If I look at fragment main, it holds DoodleView. Now you might look over here and say, well, there is no DoodleView layout, and you would be right. This there is no layout for DoodleView. DoodleView will be built programmatically, meaning in code, using this DoodleView class. But that's what some of these layout files are. So activity main hosts content, which hosts fragment main, which is going to kick off DoodleView. These others, fragment underscore color, fragment underscore line width, are used for the layout when the user selects they want to change the color. So here's the fragment underscore color, for example. By the way, notice if you do change the color and you go back in, it keeps that color. So, it's not going back to the default. It kept all your settings for your transparency and so forth there. Yeah, if just to kind of expand on that a little bit, if you would look at fragment underscore color.xml and you would look at the code, the layout, it's very simple. It has text view, seek bars, some text views. That seek bar is the draggable slider where the user can slide and see the changes. But if the user, let me go back in there. Let's make it green. Okay. So let's make it green. So as I drag these seek bars, notice that dynamically the color preview at the bottom is changing. So how is that happening? Well, it's happening with Java code, of course, but this region, this square region right there, is actually a view. So this view down here is where that's happening. And in the Java code for color dialog fragment, there's code in there that when the seek bars are changed, it updates that view. So that is how that works. Oops. So it just guides you through basically adding these pieces. The line width dialog fragment works extremely similarly. We have a seek bar as well and an image view. And finally, they have you add a class for erase image dialog fragment. So again, you're getting the completed project where everything's already there, but it is important to read through the chapter to see how these various items are added. So like I said, at the end of the day, you have about 6 class files and 5 layout files. So I encourage you to keep going with this and read the chapter, dig into the Java code, but hopefully it helps just to have an overview of which files are which, where to find hints for the assignment, and how the application works.